reason it wouldn't let me until you commented again. Great to see you. How
Well,
are
this
you?
has been a crazy day of people all over the country telling me there's been false accounts of me requesting money for my orphanage that I have.
Oh my gosh. I actually saw one of those fake accounts. When I saw your post, I did a search for you to see if I could find one of the fake ones, and I did. And then I noticed some people that I know who follow it. So maybe you can hit
Well,
them up.
we had a lady show up at church. She said the pastor said if I gave $25, he'd meet with me and pray with me after for my orphanage. So she was waiting for me to pray with her in the lobby. So listen, I need money, but not. I've got better stories.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a minimum $100 for you to
That's
be able
exactly
to
right. Oh my goodness.
you're in Lafayette, Louisiana right now, right?
I am. What happened, Pastor Steve, when the virus hit and New York was evolving into the epicenter, I was traveling in. Even when they cut all gatherings, I went in and did the first live services from the sanctuary with nobody there. So 2,000 empty seats I preached to while I was there for the first 2 weeks. And
well, for those people who are on with us who might not know, Pastor Tim has most recently been lead pastor of Our Savior's Church in Lafayette, Louisiana, but has now been voted in to be the senior pastor at Times Square Church in Manhattan. And tell us a little bit about that transition, Pastor Tim, because that's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, Pastor Steve, it really is. Someone asked me the other day, they said, how did you feel when they asked you? I said, kind of like Slumdog Millionaire. I said, I felt which is, by the way, for those watching, if you've not seen it, this is a great watch. The concept is genius. It is some slum kid in India who's on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and every question he's asked is a flashback to a painful situation that gave him the right answer. And when I look back over all the things and all the chapters in our life to go, oh my goodness, this is what God was doing. So I started in ministry 37 years ago. And so I literally wrote in my journal, God, it just took me 37 years to get ready for this position.
Wow.
And
wow.
It's an amazing story. But just to give it to you is Carter Conlon, who succeeded David Wilkerson, the author of the Cross of Switchblade, the founder of Teen Challenge, started Times Square Church. And then Carter realized he was succeeding David on stage. While the service is going on, the worship is happening. David Wilkerson turns to Carter Conlon and go, all right, you're ready. You're the new pastor, right?
You're kidding. That's how that happened.
So mine wasn't that abrupt, but it had a little bit of abruptness to it. Yeah. So in fact, in November of last year, I get a phone call from Carter Conlon, and he just goes, my time is up. He said, and God spoke to me that you're supposed to be the next senior pastor of Times Square Church. Wow. 10 years earlier, when I first came to New York City, we were sitting over at lunch on 52nd and Broadway, and he said while we sat there, now he told me years later, he said, I felt the Holy Spirit speak to me and say, that man is your replacement. He is going to be your replacement. He said he went home, told his wife and 2 board members and said, test this word. He said, I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know what's going to happen. And 10 years later, he calls me, tells me the story. And May 5th, we'll leave for New York City.
Wow. Now, this is a bit of a homecoming thing for you too. And we know each other pretty well, Pastor Tim, so I'm not trying to, tee things up that I already know, because I actually have some questions for you.
Sure.
that I actually would love to hear about, because we talk pretty regularly, but it's usually just to catch up. So, Pastor Wilkerson was like a spiritual father to you in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, and we've never talked too much about what that relationship was like. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because he was the founder of the church that you're going to now pastor.
Yeah. So one of the things is David Wilkerson has such has an incredible prophetic gift. In fact, there's been a prophecy floating around the internet over these last couple of days of something that he prophesied back in '86.
Yeah, I was going to read it to you in a second. Yeah.
So, and I have been getting. So 2 days ago, I've got phone calls, texts, and emails from all over the country on that prophecy. And then today was the same thing on my fake accounts. So it's just been it's been nonstop. So to give everybody a context, back in 1957, and I'm just telling you, if you've not read the book The Cross and the Switchblade, another great quarantine. So watch Slumdog Millionaire, then read The Cross and the Switchblade. And in that book, David Wilkerson, and I think this is important to say, well, this is going to hurt some people during quarantine. God spoke to David Wilkerson to get rid of his TV. And I know this is not good word for anybody here in quarantine.
That was back in 1956 when there was like 3 hours total of programming
and rabbit ears on the TV.
Yeah.
So he gets rid of it, which obviously, according to Pastor Steve, is a lot easier than now. So in the midst of that, he starts praying, and he has Life magazine cover, and on it are the gang members that are about to be prosecuted for killing a kid in New York City, a paraplegic kid that couldn't defend himself, and these gang members kill him in Central Park. God speaks to David to leave this small Pennsylvania town and to go and minister to the gangs. So he goes to New York City. He's never been there before. And his introduction is start preaching on the streets. As he's preaching on the streets, the police come to stop him. And while the police come to stop him, says, "You can't preach here," a ranking officer, a captain, comes up and says, "What seems to be the problem?" He goes, "Captain," he says, "he's trying to preach here. And we already have enough problems with all the gangs." And so the officer goes, "Let's let the man preach." And for those that don't know, that's my father. And who would have thought that really almost 63 years ago, Pastor Steve, that when God used my father as a captain in the police department to say, "Let the man preach," he wasn't just doing it for David Wilkerson, but he was doing it also for his son 63 years later. And so the relationship with my father and David Wilkerson then began to blossom. My dad became the first treasurer of Brooklyn Teen Challenge. He would get people out of paroled into his custody, bring him into the program, and people like Nicky Cruz and one of the men that started one of the great Hispanic rehabs, Victory Outreach, with Sonny Arganzoni all over the world, all came out of that period.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So as a result of that, because of my dad's relationship, and I guess for a generation, and I'll just say this, Pastor Steve, because based on your question, my relationship with David Wilkerson, I'm saying this to this generation that has not known good parental relationships and didn't get an inheritance of godliness from their family. And I'm telling them, I am one of the rare ones that inherited a godly heritage from my dad. And so instead of whatever generation you're from going, "Oh, my family was messed up, dysfunction, my dad left me," I get it. We all have pain. But now it's time for you to change that. It's time for you to give a godly inheritance to your children. And I'm telling you, I got the inheritance from my dad in this relationship that has allowed me 37 years later now of ministry to step into that role of pastoring Times Square Church.
I think that's incredible, Pastor Tim. I mean, I want to come back to David Wilkerson because I do want to ask you about that prophecy and some of the other things that he has prophesied. Or he was a singular person, like as far as I know. Like I've never heard of anybody else like him. But the thing that I think is really special, just having heard you say that Jesse and I talk about a lot, and that, you know, probably the most valuable part of our time spent with you has not been, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but it hasn't been ministry related specifically. You know, I've taken, you know, every one of your sermons and reworked it so many ways. You know, I know all the names of the people that have been on this scroll here too. I'm like, yeah, you preach a sermon, you preach a sermon too. But that is the most valuable thing.
Jesse,
hey,
the best Andres has just stepped on the screen.
Yeah.
That is my girl. Steve,
I knew you were going to say
move.
that. That's why I came on.
That's exactly right. Pastor Steve, you can move to the side. Jesse and I want to talk.
Exactly. We miss you guys.
Well, it's so good to see you. I'm just telling anybody who's watching, that's what keeps it all together. That's the person that keeps it all together. There is no New City Church if it wasn't for that woman right there.
It's true. She tells me that all the time.
Yeah.
I love it.
But hey, stay here for a second. Because one of the things that I think the most valuable thing for us, and you can go when you need to, but just because the comment I'm about to make, like what you were saying about you getting a godly heritage from your dad, I think probably what we have felt most blessed by is seeing you and Cindy raise your kids. And for those of you who don't know, Pastor Tim has 4 amazing kids who love the Lord, who are normal, grounded, you know, for having grown up as pastors' kids and you know, first of all in inner city Detroit and then, you know, New York City and then Lafayette, Louisiana. I mean, for them, it's just been such a delight, literally, to get to look forward to spending time with your kids and to see them how they love and serve the Lord. That is something that I think that for us has been the most probably special thing. And yeah, I would just kind of, on the receiving end of what you're saying, when you talk to people about let this be the generation, or make, regardless of what your history has been, man, I just want to say thank you, because I think in many ways you have actually, that blessing keeps, there are other people like me who've been close to you. I can, you know, name a dozen other people around the country and who have mentored other people and who have made their, you know, decision to honor the Lord and to raise a family that loves the Lord. And so anyway, thanks for doing that, Pastor Tim. And thanks for being a part of our life, for real. That's not why that's not this. Hey, listen, let's come back to David Wilkerson, but our pizza is cold by now. Do you have your pizza, Pastor Tim? Okay, I was wondering about it. I just jumped right into it. I'm just an amateur here. It was a very rookie move. This has been blessed already. We prayed over it. We actually spend every week just praying at Lou Malnati's, and just blessing all the pizza that goes out. So we'll let you start taking some of this. But my one of the questions before we get all serious and come back to David Wilkerson in a minute is, first of all, what kind of pizza did you choose?
Well, listen, and just for those that are watching, I told Pastor Steve, I said, if this pizza doesn't come when you're promising, I won't do this interview. I won't do it at all. And I even asked for extras. I said, with all the kids that I have, he said 18, but it's 4. And Pastor Steve went overboard. I want to tell you this. So we got 4 pizzas. We got spinach, cheese, sausage, and pepperoni. And there's not much left right now. I had to hold this one. So I said, okay, I need one for this broadcast here. So that was important. And then you sent us these 2 cookies that everybody's going like for real? Are these going to be? And then my daughter's eyes got big when she took the first bite. She goes, Dad, you got to taste this cookie.
Was that which one? Which daughter?
Lauren Gwendolyn, the littlest one.
Because all of your daughters are. I come over to when I get to your house. The cookies. They're
like
That's
this
right.
big.
They're amazing. I don't know whether
That's
they're
right.
always stocked or not, but there's always cookies there. It's amazing. That's your daughter.
Well, they love you guys. And then you sent us 2 cans of popcorn, and then the thing I requested, I had a special request, which was the Illuminati's. It sounds like the Illuminati, but the yes, that's so. This is this cultic restaurant. I got the dressing. The salad dressing is amazing. So it was thank you. I told you, I knew it was her.
Yeah, I was like, send it now. That's the most important part.
That's
So which
exactly
one did you
right.
go
Thank you.
Did you go with pepperoni?
Pepperoni. No, right now I got sausage.
Oh,
Okay.
that's the real deal. It's got the patty on it.
It's amazing. It
Okay,
really is.
good.
Listen, you know me. I'm gonna fight for New York pizza, but anytime you take me to Illuminati's, man, it's I have a war going on.
That was going to be the question. Is just to take a minute and talk about what the best pizza is and why it's Chicago.
So
Because I feel like this was my analogy. I was talking to Jesse's brother earlier on today, and I was saying, I feel like, to me, now this is obviously it's very subjective, but to me it's like Jordan versus Patrick Ewing. It's like Patrick Ewing, solid player. You want him on your team. He's gonna make some. He's gonna move the ball. He's gonna put some points on the board. Oh, we're losing you. But Jordan comes straight from heaven. He's born of heaven, and I feel like that's the difference between Chicago and New York pizza.
Well, the first problem is you can't fold it. That's the first problem. You're supposed to fold it.
Why would you need to fold your pizza? That's what you just feel like.
Italians do it.
I know, but I'm saying like that was out of necessity because it was too thin to even like manage. It was like whoa. Oh, okay, that's it. Oh, you keep freezing up on us.
Well, I think it's the Holy Spirit that because you got in the flesh, and I feel like the Holy Spirit is blocking this because here we are talking about David Wilkerson, and then you want to bring a divisive conversation that I feel like in the spirit. You watch. We didn't have one breakage when we started talking about David Wilkerson, Team Challenge. But as soon as you brought up this whole Jordan Ewing thing.
Oh, and then Todd Cruz just made a comment too. He's trying to stoke the fires. He said LeBron is better than Jordan. That's what he said. And that is nonsense, obviously. We don't even have to pay attention to that. Yeah. See,
until we get back in the spirit, this is going to happen. We're going to have these breaks in technology.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, as far as pizza goes, we can kind of put that to rest, I think. How does it feel for you guys moving back to New York City? You're a New York City native, but you spent a lot of time outside of there. How does it compare to other places that you lived, and how does it feel now that you're going to be moving back?
Well, the hardest part about New York is, in my opinion, is raising children there. It's because you have to. When I first went, we brought our 4 kids, and they were 10 and under when we first went. So I couldn't even imagine if we were quarantined for these last 2 months. If I would have been quarantined. So I think you guys already. Look at them, ladies and gentlemen. They've been quarantined with just 2.
It's a real struggle.
It is, but you're in a house at least.
Yeah, we got
space. I talked with someone from Brooklyn today. They literally put their kids, their little ones, in a car, went to the IKEA parking lot with scooters to get out of the house. Wow. They're in the IKEA parking lot talking to me.
Oh, I can't believe it.
But that is the hardest part. I think the hardest part is I always tell people all the time, as I said, if you can raise one child there, but if it's two, you got to move to Long Island. If you have three, you got to move to New Jersey. And if you have four, you go to Lafayette, Louisiana. So I think what's happened now, and this is really important, Pastor Steve and Jesse, we had to sit down. So my children, like in a few months, I will have legitimately 4 teenagers in my house. So in June 1st, Lauren turns 13, and that's 4 teenagers. Four teenagers. And so here's what's important. When we were having the discussion about going to New York, we met with each of them individually. We knew that they each needed to hear. This is kind of to raise up a child in the way they should go. We knew each one of them needed to hear it a different way. Mm-hmm. And it was probably 5 hours of meetings, aggregate 5 hours of talking with our kids. Wow. But what we had to explain to them, that one of the things in raising kids is we let them know this wasn't, and this is really important, this move wasn't, we feel like, is our 4th quarter. We feel like this is our final quarter, unless God gives us an overtime in some degree. But this is our 4th quarter. We call it our legacy quarter. We're supposed to invest and leave a footprint for other generations. But we told our children this. We told Christian, Anna, Lauren, and Grace, we said, this is not just our move. This is your move too. This is for your destiny. We're going to get you a little bit closer. We knew that our oldest daughter felt a calling to theater and Broadway, to be a Christian witness. And she's amazing. And so I told her, I said, well, I can't get you any closer than this. This is the closest I can get you.
Literally,
yeah. I mean, the church is on Broadway.
Yeah.
There's Broadway small groups. There's in the church, Broadway actors. It's an amazing opportunity. Then for my middle daughter, she feels she used to go into medical missions, and she's always wanted to go to Columbia. I said, now you're there at Columbia. You're going to get to go on all these missions trips every semester because they're going to be homeschooling. And I said, you are about to go with the top doctors in New York to different countries of the world twice a year. So I said, you're going to be a step closer. So every one of them, we're bringing them a step closer to the destiny. And that's any move a parent, anytime you change and do something, that's why when you're making a decision in your life, for me, a wisdom decision has all wins on it. If there is, I win, but my wife loses. I win, but my children lose. That's not wise. Mm-hmm. And we knew that this was a wisdom decision because our kids were going to win on this, their destiny. And so it's never a wise decision when there's something in the loss column. And that's a really big deal. So that's important for us. So our kids are winning on this decision.
Love it. Love it. What's the pace is real different though for you, huh? Compared to where you are now?
Yeah. Pastor Steve, I think for us, as we're dealing with pace, the hardest thing for a New Yorker is the commute. Sometimes if the hardest commute is when you hear these words, it's a 2-zone fare. What that means is you got to take a subway and a bus somewhere, which is just, right. My commute when I lived in New York was 1 hour and 15 minutes each way. So 2.5 hours I was on the train. Yeah. So we made a commitment as a family. We're going to live in Manhattan, that literally walking distance from the church. And we all agreed to it. And we said, we don't need a neighborhood because we know what we're called to do there. So that's what makes it a little bit easier. We get to be real close there. That's one of the ways you attack the pace, Pastor Steve, is you break that commute down. And with older kids, I can do that. I can break the commute down because I don't have to live in a neighborhood because my kids are all set on what they're supposed to do. So that's the cool thing.
It's amazing. So this has been quite a what a transition time for you to be starting at a new church.
That's right.
A historic church, very, important around the world in the middle of all this lockdown, basically, and crisis, especially in New York City.
That's right.
You've been already traveling back and forth there. What is, from your experience there, what's the word I'm trying to think of, the environment like? What's the tone like there?
Well, it was kind of eerie that the 2 weeks the first 2 Sundays I was there as the world is trying to figure out what this is or what's going on. I'm going back and forth into the epicenter of this whole thing. Well, what's crazy is that Louisiana, where I'm at now, is the fastest growing of the virus. And then New York has the most. So I have the fastest and the most. So I'm not sure if I'm Jesus's man or if I'm Jonah. It's one of those two. I could be Jonah, that everywhere I go, you better throw me off because I'm not doing too good.
You could just be patient zero, just going back and forth.
I could be. I may be the missing link in this whole thing.
We got to get the authorities involved here.
That's exactly right. That's right. Get the authorities involved. What's eerie was traveling through one of the busiest airports in the world, which is Atlanta, and it's a ghost town. Our flights were between 6 and 11 people on the flights traveling. And it's scary. I mean, I sat next to a woman or in front of a woman that asked 5 questions before she took a cup of coffee from the flight attendant. Where did it come? Where were your hands? Did you take the cup out of a bag? And then the person next to me literally pulled out all these wipes, sprayed down the seat, the arms, the tray table, and literally I thought I was next. I thought she was going to spray me down. So it's amazing. So to see the planes as a ghost town, the airports, and then to get to Manhattan. I got to Manhattan the day that they shut off Europe and there's no visitors on the street. The next week I got there where the quarantine was beginning to take place and the streets were empty. And I've never seen New York like that before.
Wow. Yeah. Well, what a time. It feels like a crazy time in the country. How do you feel like the church? Our church is a small church plant. And I've been like shocked even just today. It seems like more opportunities keep popping up for ways that we can actually minister during this time. And it feels like there's a real special favor right now on, like, for us, I feel like for where we're at, a special favor, and maybe even a special favor on the church worldwide to minister during this time. And to just be a comfort and a steadying agent in the culture. But tell me a little bit about what you see, especially, as you're getting ready to start in such a key place in New York City. What do you think the role of the church is right now?
Well, I see 3 things happening. And I think, Pastor Steve, I think it's especially what's happening even at New City Church. Let me say this. I think these 3 things are happening today. Number 1, the crisis is bringing creativity out of the church like never before. Yeah. I'm thinking how creative you guys were. Watching your worship service last week on I call it Zoom worship, was fantastic. Yeah. And for those that are watching, if you haven't seen New City's worship last week, it is brilliant. It's powerful. And so the creativity, I think is something that's happening. And I would tell any church today, which I think is important, with all your colleges that are now shut down till the fall, probably, your most creative people are now home on furlough, in a sense. Use those. It's free labor. It's free. That you have a chance now to get all these college kids and just go, tell me what we need to do. Tell me what we need to do. And so you guys are so creative, Pastor Steve, you and Jesse and your team. Here's the part I would tell you. I watched our Bible school at Times Square Church, which is Summit. It's Summit International School of the Ministry. What they did was, you could be as simply creative as this. So they had to shut down service, cap and gown in 24 hours, and then said, finish your rest of your studies online. You'll graduate, then you'll finish your studies. Yeah, I thought it was genius.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening. I think it's legit. I think they caricatured them, and what I feel like is this. So if you have to buy a shirt, you still get the shirt whether you buy it on Amazon or you buy it at Target. You still buy the shirt, and it's. Right. I think the church has to find creative ways of going, let's not only engage, but let's find creative ways to legitimize that online audience. Because here's the bottom line. Let's just be real clear. When we come back, when the dust settles, there's a different church we're coming to. It's going to, financially, but I'm letting every pastor know, your numbers are going to go down because some people are going to go, what? I can go to church with pajamas and a cup of coffee? I'm in. And I think we're going to have to find ways of engagement and not delegitimize that, but legitimize that and find new ways.
And I've heard more pastors talk about that as their fear for many years now. Like, well, I'm not going to really invest in online worship because then people will stay home. And, I think it was a bit of an inevitable shift that's going to take place in some ways because people are oriented so much around digital mediums now compared to even 10 years ago. I mean, you have a generation that literally, they can't even conceive of a world without social media. And the rest of us are just wishing we could go back to
I think what you're going to see, just my thought, and it's going to be the first person we're looking at hiring is we're going to hire an online pastor. Seriously, but someone who's going to pastor the people that are online, all the watch parties and all the groups that are online, that you're going, well, let's find ways to engage. But I also think this, Pastor Steve, we're watching that the crisis has not only brought creativity, it's also brought community that has not been there. Think about this. I mean, I love that every night in New York City at 7:00, all the people come out and start clapping for the first responders in all 5 boroughs. They come out. Yep, they start coming out and just start clapping because of all the first responders. My Italian heritage, they come out at 7 at night and they just all start singing off the balconies. Is what they start doing. But who would have thought you'd be asking your neighbor, do you have toilet paper? Who would have started asking your neighbor, do you have water? It's creating community. So where the online may be seeming to distance us, there's also the other end that's creating community. And you're talking to people that you've never talked to before. And
literally,
which really the most important thing, and this is the most important thing I can say about this crisis. It's not creativity only, and it's not just community, but it's creating conversations. And this is the most important. Because now there's a depth of conversations that I've had with athletes, neighbors, doctors, that there's a depth, that there's an open door. And that I would tell people all the time, listen to what I'm about to say. This is really important. Stop discussing the ticker on CNN and Fox. We all see that. We all know the stats. We all know what the Dow for your eggs into online. You need to teach the people on how to have these conversations from Uber Eats coming to your door to the Target person, to the neighbor. This is the moment that people are open for depth of conversation. Don't rehash what everybody can get online, on TV and on the news. Talk about the things they can't get, which is eternity, destiny, priority. Speak to those things.
Great, Pastor Tim. Wow, that's great. That's a great piece of advice. And I think that's really appreciated, actually. And that's one of the things that has been really astounding about this time. I'm hesitant to say to put any, like, to look for silver lining right now when people are really hurting, because that's the wrong time to say, oh, look all the good that's coming out of this, but when you've got, hospital beds that are filled, and we have our own folks from our church, who are almost, they're healthcare providers. And so they're really feeling the weight of this, because they're seeing people die in numbers that they haven't ever seen before. But there is something good there is something that God is going to bring out of this that will be good. And I know that in the midst of this, there has been just an incredible openness on everyone, just like you were saying, from just the young person, average, just trying to make their way through life, to the, high level leader. They're all feeling, because they've all just feel like they've realized that they've lost control.
Yeah.
We keep saying, we've kept saying over and over again, like, just because you have lost control doesn't mean you don't have a choice. And then being able to focus on, okay, well, what are the decisions that we do have in front of us right now? And kind of like what you were saying, bring the conversation to priority and to destiny and to eternity. Those are great thoughts, Pastor Tim.
Well, and I'm seeing it happen. I'm getting calls from people that make a lot of money that know that this is out of their control. And so I was talking to one couple who play, he's a professional. And then you think, sound mind, what's the opposite of that? Is just crazy thoughts, crazy narratives you start building. Here's what takes place, Pastor Steve. When there is fear, God, this is important for people to know. I had a lady I invited to church, comes to church, and this is when we were in Detroit. There was a lot of cars, and she couldn't find a place to park. And she said when she started to see the neighborhood the church was in, this fear hit her, and she goes, I thought I may get robbed, my car may get broken into, and I left. And then she asked me this important question. Do you think that was God putting that fear there to teach me to leave? I said, never. God doesn't use fear as a language to communicate. He'll never communicate in fear. He's a father. He's a good. Abusive fathers communicate with fear, but not God the Father. He'll speak through his word. He'll speak through the Spirit. He'll speak through a message at New City by Pastor Steve. He'll speak through wise people, but God never communicates in fear. And so if you're making decisions in fear, you're not making a Father God decision, because that's not his mode of communication. Never does he communicate in fear.
Yeah. That's so good. We lost you for a little bit, Pastor Tim, after you were talking about getting on the phone with somebody who is a professional athlete. And then we kind of picked you back up consistently when you were talking about God's not giving us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and sound mind. Can you rewind and remember at least a little bit, fill that in for us?
Yeah. And so he called me up and said, hey, can we pray? Because there's fear there. And what I was telling the family was, when there's fear that's come, I said, it's God. It's not the thing that's causing the fear that's the issue. It's God beginning to point at something that has replaced him as the one in control. Because I said, even if we fix the pandemic, there's going to be other things that are going to cause the fear. I said, what happens with fear is something got misprioritized. And now if it's your health, if it's your finances. So think about this as an athlete. If you don't have a season or if you're not healthy, and then let's take the season. If you don't have a season, you don't have a check. And if you don't have a check, you can't, you don't have a way of life that you're used to. And then all of a sudden the fear comes in. What God was saying is that if you're trusting in anything that can be shaken, he says, then you've misprioritized God. Because the only person that can't be shaken in this pandemic is God himself. God never changes. That's the great theological word, Pastor Steve, that immutability, the unchanging character of God.
Yeah. Wow. So next week, it's really neat that you're bringing that up. Next week, I've told you a little bit about him. This new friend of mine his name is Vin Baker. He is a four-time NBA All-Star. One of his claims to fame is that he made $100 million and lost it all. You know, and really hit rock bottom. And then that was when he met Christ, and now he is his whole life has been kind of built back up. He feels like the Lord's been working in him, and he's on the coaching staff. He's an assistant coach with the Milwaukee Bucks. And but to talk to him during this crisis, there was no sense of anxiety or fear. It's just so interesting to see. Here's a guy who knows not to put his trust in either his performance or his paycheck or anything else. And so I think he's going to be our guest next week for this time. I'm going to send him some pizza and try and bribe him into talking to us a little bit too.
I love it.
We're gonna wrap up in a little bit, but I have a rapid fire question round that I'd like to do with people. Okay.
All right, I'm ready.
And I've been paying attention to some of the questions people have been asking a little bit, so that I can kind of add. So I think we're going to cover a lot of ground here that people have asked about. So just going to be. I'm not going to put a timer on it. I did that with Pastor Mark last week, and that was a mistake because, everybody just wants to hear the answers to the question. Okay, it's not a game show, all right? That's the point. You've already got your prize. Okay, so first one is favorite quote.
Oh, my goodness. My favorite quote. Oh, man.
Hard one. Yeah.
Okay, here it is. I would say this. Oh my God, my mind is going 1,000 places a second. If you want to be much for God, you have to be much with God, from Leonard Ravenhill.
Oh wow!
Wow.
A Leonard Ravenhill quote. That's wonderful. That was one of your spiritual fathers, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, that was the next one. Spiritual hero.
Spiritual hero would be David Wilkerson, Leonard Ravenhill, and R.T. Kendall. The three fathers in my life. Those three.
Wonderful. Favorite book after the Bible?
After the Bible, hands down, is Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis.
Thomas à Kempis. Wow.
There's no doubt. It replaced Pilgrim's Progress, which was it for many, many years.
That's what I thought it was, yeah.
Yep, and it's Thomas à Kempis. And it wasn't easy. It was Pilgrim's Progress had a 20-year slot, and Thomas à Kempis replaced it in the last 7 years.
Wow. I'll have to go back and read it. It's been many years. I don't think I really read it very carefully in the first time. I think I was assigned it. So anyway.
With the starting of New City Church and being quarantined with your two little ones, you need to read Imitation of Christ.
Yeah, I really do. But they won't let me. There's the irony. I want to get 2 pages in there. Anyway, okay, third rapid fire question, or fourth one. Shoe brand, favorite shoe brand.
Oh, favorite shoe brand. Wow, you really got me. You really got me on this.
Balenciagas, right? Wait, what was it? It wasn't Balenciaga.
Okay,
it's something else.
I'm gonna say it, but I want people to know. Prada on eBay. Prada. I have no shame. I will buy used shoes all the time. I have no problem dropping $30 for a good pair of used shoes.
That's great. That's great.
I admire that.
Somebody else's shoes. Somebody else's feet have.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Okay, fifth one. First place you're going to go after quarantine.
Oh, I love it. You know, honestly, I have missed the gym. I can't wait. I can't wait to go back to the gym. I think every one of us is putting on about 15, 20, 30 pounds.
Yeah, she's cooking every night and fattening me up. Yeah. Okay, a couple easy ones. Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, waffles, 100%.
Wow. Why?
I love that you're so sure with every answer. I love that quality.
No, waffles, no doubt. Because you don't have to get a stack. It's not slanted over. It's one waffle and you eat it. That's the way. And the butter stays in those little crevices. It doesn't go anywhere.
No, I love waffles.
Yeah. Okay, corn or flour tortillas?
Oh my goodness, flour totally all the time. Oh yeah, easy.
I'm on the other end. No way. Okay, I'll forgive that. Next one. Favorite Michael Jordan moment.
So silly.
There's so many. I know.
I I think my favorite Michael Jordan moment that I remember watching, I think they're playing. It's when Karl Malone was playing for the Jazz, and he was down at the baseline, and the Jazz thought they had the game and dribbled right around him and scored and scored the go-ahead bucket. And yeah, it's exactly right. It was unbelievable to go how he single-handedly did that, and those poor John Stockton and Karl Malone couldn't get it done.
Yeah, it was Utah though. You know, it was Utah.
It was Utah.
So, Stevie Wonder or Whitney Houston?
Oh, there's no doubt. Detroit. I'm from Detroit. Stevie Wonder. You serious? That's such a silly question. And if you're gonna mention a lady, it better be like Aretha Franklin.
Aretha. Okay. Yeah. That would have been maybe a better comparison. I don't know though. I thought you're very emotional guy. You're Italian. I thought maybe you were really into
Motown. When you go Motown, I'm very emotional with Motown.
Okay. Smoothies or shake?
Oh, smoothie all the time. And I haven't really been. I always was a shake person. But I think when I started to get my health back together, in my heart, I pretend it's a shake, but in my mouth it's a smoothie.
Yeah. Which is a great story, by the way. You had a health scare a few years ago. How many years ago was that?
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
So
you turned everything around.
Went to the doctor, do my physical every year, which I would say this, to Pastor Steve and Jesse, when you have little ones, you got to do your physical because you want to walk your girls down that aisle. And so I would get a physical every year. Well, came down here, first year down here, my doctor did my physical, and he comes in, so you do the blood work before. So he goes, hey, let's talk about your blood work before we do anything else. And that's never a good sign when he goes, let's talk. Right. You don't want to talk about anything with your doctor. Right. And he goes, well, we looked at your blood work, and he says your triglycerides are at 900. I go, well, I'm trying to get them at 1,000, and I'll do my best. And he goes, no. He says they should be 100. And when you're at 900, he said, either you have pancreatic cancer, or you have the beginnings of diabetes, or C, you've been eating too many sweets. Well, I knew it was C. Coming down to Louisiana, and it was C. But he said, and because you have 900 triglycerides, he said we can't even measure to see a lot of other things that are going on. And so he said, when we start to try to measure anything else, you're just off the charts on everything. He said, in fact, your blood pressure is at stroke level. And he said, and then he threw in there, and he says, and through all of this, you're obese. And so I said,
he threw that word in there, right?
He threw it in. He said, you're obese. So he gave me all this medication for blood pressure, for just for everything, just to bring that. So three medicines. I took them. I put them on my bedroom nightstand, and I said, I'm not going to take any of it. I said, I did 5 things, Pastor Steve. I said, I'm going to drink nothing but water. I said, no more desserts, chicken or fish, other than deep dish pizza night.
Gotta do it. Yeah.
So and chicken or fish. I said, no more Starbucks. That was a big deal.
That was a big deal for you. Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
And then I was going to work out. I was going to get a trainer. Instead of pretending I knew what I was doing, I was going to get a trainer who is awful. If he's watching, awful. So let me just say this. I told him this. I said, I know, his name is Jared. Never get anybody whose name is Jared. So I told him this. I said, I know the scam. I know the scam. This is what you do. I hate you, then I kill you, then I go to prison and work out in the yard 7 days a week.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. So I did those 5 things, and this is the absolute truth. Cindy can verify. Never touched medicine, and in 6 weeks he wanted to see me back. Every number went to normal. Every number.
Wow. Thank God. Awesome.
So that's why getting those physicals was so important. It's just getting the news that goes, man, I gotta do something with this and do the right thing. So I've got 4. I'm gonna have 4 teenagers. I got to make sure I'm around. At least I want to be around for the 4th quarter here to do something.
Yeah. Pastor Tim, I'm gonna wrap things up here because I think they're gonna boot us off at the 1 hour mark. So we can put a pin in it, and maybe another time, sometime in 2021 quarantine, we can come back around and do this. I really appreciate your time tonight. What a joy always talking to you with friends like this or just with us. So we love you, and we are praying for you and Cindy and the kids. And man, my goodness, thank you for this time. It's been enriching. I think everybody who's been on feels so encouraged by this. I know that I am. So love you, Pastor Tim.
Love both you, Jesse. You're gorgeous. You're the best. And the other guy is good too. But let me just say, I love both of you. I'm so proud of both of you. New City Church is the place to be. If you're in Chicago, go to New City. It's an amazing place. I had the honor of being there, from the preaching to the worship. Some of the best around. Love you guys, and hope to connect soon.